Hi everyone. I have been collecting all this juiced fruit for the last 2 weeks. Now this one, oh I forgot I put some tomatoes in here. This one is soaked in water, and what I always say about pulp is it's very dry if it's not soaked in water, so you need to like reconstitute it. This is the pulp that hasn't been soaked in water, and you can see how dry that is. I'll take a handful of this other waste out here and see if I can show you that difference. So there's the waste that has been soaked in water, and you can see it's really sloppy. And that's the waste that hasn't been soaked in water, very dry. So what I'm actually going to do is put half of this in one pot, or sorry, I'm going to put a quarter of this in one pot, a quarter of that in one pot. There's roughly the same amount of waste in both. And then I'm going to do 2 experiments under the ground as well and see if I can notice any difference between all 4 experiments. I'm pretty sure this pot is empty, but let's just check to be sure. Close enough to empty. Oh, I just saw a little lizzie sneaking in there. Let's see if I can twist that around, get rid of those little roots. There we go. I'll just scoop that out, make sure it's really fully empty. There's no worms in there. There's no soldier flies in there. Nothing. One empty pot. Now this probably won't be exact, let's face it, because I haven't got a weighing machine or a measuring apparatus with me. There are some big chunks of waste in here, like the ends of some of the carrots or the beetroot or whatever, like that for instance. So that will create a little bit of moisture in here, and the apple. This is apple, carrots and beetroot, and as I said in the other one, some tomatoes. Apple, carrot, beetroot, pulp. It won't be very full. And let's see what will happen. There's a tomato I can put in there. Okay, it's one pot. I'm not going to bother covering that anymore. Look at the worms in there. Gee whiz. I don't want to disturb him. Off you go, little fella, you can stay there. That means that pot will get a head start perhaps with the worms. There we go. Oops. Oh, this one's empty too, which is wonderful. Look at that beautiful soil. God, just love that. You can see I've got lots of wandering dew growing in this back area as well, which needs a total clean out. The problem I have in this back part of the garden is Chinese elm trees. They are unbelievably prolific propagators, and if you live in a really barren area and you want trees to grow fast, good Lord, plant a Chinese elm. But then you'll have problems for years, of course, because they propagate so profusely. Anyway, so let's tip, if I can, try and get a quarter of this waste in here. I probably can't. So it's not going to be an exact experiment. Actually, I need half. I need half in the other one too. What am I saying? I need half, so I'll have to go and put some more back in the other pot. That's probably roughly half. There's a Chinese elm, look at that. See? Chinese elm. Terrible, horrible plants. Got so many of them sprouting up at the moment. I really need half the container, because half I'm going to put under the ground, so I'll go down a bit further with this. Like I say, it's not an exact experiment, it's just a rough guide. We'll just see what happens between all the 4 things. I'm going to dig some holes first here now. Oh, now we've had a lot of rain lately, and look how dry that soil is under there. Just goes to show you how much you need to water your garden, even when it does rain. God, this is so root bound. Trying to break those roots up as I go. I think I'll leave that big one there and use it as an indication of the divider. Now that would have been really hard to dig up with all those roots. I want to make sure I get the hole at least 15 centimetres down, otherwise animals are going to be likely to smell it. And I'm going to put the wet fermented waste in this one because I think the water runs this way, so I don't want the water from this theoretically running into the other hole. I don't think I can get that big root. Oh, there we go, cracked it. That's good. Didn't think to bring some tools out here to cut roots. There we go. Got it. Okay, that'll have to do. And I'll just put more soil on top. This one is the rest of the wet waste going into this hole. I'm not going to rinse that out because I don't want to add any more water to this experiment. And then, oh, there's a little wormy coming out, look at that. So then I'm going to put this over the top. Now this one's got a head start because there's already worms. But that waste could be a little bit acidic because it's been soaking in that water, so it's fermented a bit. And you can see the little worm there trying to get away. Now I have to cover this with dirt to stop the odour getting out to any animals. And I have to cover it with the mesh as well, so it makes it easy for me to check the waste underneath the mesh when I need to. I've still got the pins from the first experiment. And I want to be sure that all parts of the mesh are covered up. I did another experiment a while ago and soldier flies found their way in through those little holes where the mesh was. And I'll cover that up more once I put the other waste in the other side. So that's one. You can see that's still on the screen. There. Now I need to cover that really well, both of them, and just leave the pegs visible. And get rid of that horrible wandering dew. This is some grass clippings from a big pile I've got, and you can see how grass clippings mat together. Now, I love them on your garden bed just a couple of inches thick, but if you put them in these big piles, they go like this, and they get really stinky, and all the bugs hang around them, and they get mouldy, and it takes a long time for it to break down. but if you just put it around your garden like that, a couple of inches thick, not too thick, it will turn into beautiful soil. Add your cut leaves in with it as well, munched up through the mower. It will break down quicker and it will turn into beautiful soil, and you don't have to turn it or do anything to it. Now I need to make sure I've got that pin visible there. And pin visible there. Now the trick is to keep monitoring it. So I'll try and do this every couple of days, but no guarantees. It depends how busy I get. So thanks for watching this part 1. So hi again everyone. It's 3 days now since I started this test. This should be the dry waste. Now look at that, little tiny flies in there. Interesting. But you can see, I should just pick some out and show you so that you can see clearly. That big chunk's broken down a bit quicker because there's moisture in those bits. But the dry waste is still dry. Oh, more bugs in there. The wet one had gone quite mouldy while it was inside the bucket. It had a bit of a head start on the dry waste. So one would expect this one would decompose quicker anyway, but you can see the soil that's starting to accumulate there. And let's have a dig up. A bit hard to tell yet really, it's only 3 days. I am really pleased to know that nothing has tried to dig this up. So that grass clippings on top has made a beautiful cover. This was the wet waste. Doesn't look like it's done anything. It's gone a little bit mouldy on the top, of course. And there's the dry waste. And it hasn't done much either. There's a little soldier fly buzzing around. So it hasn't really done much either. Hello again everyone. It's now another 3 days since I started this experiment, and I just saw a soldier fly buzzing around this pot, and this is pot number 3. This should have the dry waste in it. Wow, look at that. So it's starting to decompose. Let's see if we can work out how much is left in there. You can see around the edges, the dark soil that's been produced around the edges. It's still looking very dry though. I don't think we've had any rain the last couple of days. Yeah, there's a couple of those little funny stripy bugs in there. I think they're little millipedes, so that really hasn't done a lot. And this is the wet waste. Oh, it definitely looks like it's done more. You can see in there. Not a lot, but it's definitely turning to soil quicker than the dry waste. It's still quite dry as well because all the moisture in it has already dissipated out, a lot of it, but it's still decomposing a bit faster than the dry waste, just at a rough glance. So we're trying to work out which one will disappear first, of course, and what that difference might be, which is a bit hard to calculate without digging it all out. I can feel that the ground is quite dry. This grass clippings has literally gone pretty hard, so that will take a while to break down now because it's not moist. That's okay, it's providing a good cover to see if we can get this experiment working properly. So this was the wet waste. Yeah, it's still, you know, at the moment they're still roughly doing the same thing. I wouldn't say that was going necessarily any faster or slower than the other one yet. So we cover that up. This, of course, is the dry waste. Decomposed than the other ones. Now I feel like I've got to go back and check the size of them, but I won't. I'll leave it for now. We'll wait and see what happens in another 3 days. Because every time I uncover them, it changes the experiment because it lets air into the ground, but they're both getting the same amount of air, theoretically, so hopefully that keeps the test similar for all. It's been 11 days since I started this test, and I haven't been able to get out here for the last 2 days because it was too hot or too wet, so I might have missed my chance to see how this is all going, but let's open it up and have a look. Oh, look at that. And some mozzies in there. So that looks almost decomposed. Oh, there's lots of little funny little bugs in there I haven't seen before. I think there might be little baby fruit flies perhaps, I don't know what they are, but I think it's enough now to take that out and see how much will fit in my hand. So with the soil, that's a handful, so you'd probably say half of that was easily decomposed already. See, there's not much left there now. We had a full day of rain yesterday, so let's see how this one... Now, isn't that interesting? Look how mushy that's gone on top. Now, I think this is definitely more, even though it has definitely started to decompose as it's got wet, I would say. I'm guessing from the rain, but that looks like more than a handful. That's definitely bigger than the other one, the wet waste. But decomposing better now that it's wet. Wet waste on this side. You can see all that grass clippings is all wet again now, which is really good. That'll help it break down more. So this is the wet waste under the soil. Oh, look at all the little bugs in there now. See them all running around? Now, just looking at that, I can tell that that's still a little bit more than a... Let's have a go. Not bad. There's still a little bit out to the sides there though. A bit harder to measure this one because it's mixed in with the soil. There's no defined space. But it's decomposing, but I still think that is a bit slower than in the compost. You can see that's a larger amount even mixed with the soil. Now it's about to rain again, so I've got to be quick here. Let's look at this one. Oh no! Soil got in there. And this of course was the drier waste, and it looks about the same, so that I think 3 of them are the same, and the winner at this stage is still the compost. So if you get all those little bits together with this, oh dear, doesn't want to work for me, I'm trying to hurry here. So with the soil, the dry matter covered with the soil, the wet matter covered with the soil, and the dry waste inside the compost, are still slower and roughly the same decomposition rate as each other. So the Compot is still a little bit ahead. Hi again. It's 4 days since I last looked at this pot, and I've got to try and be quick. It's going to rain again. And let's see what's happened. This is the pot that had the soaked waste. Oh goodness, you could pretty much say that's all gone. There's a little tiny bit of waste left. Let's have a quick look. You can still see that there's, they were the tomatoes actually. See, the tomatoes are still there, but that other waste, the carrots, the beetroot and the apple, have all gone. So if I put a handful of that in my hand, that's pretty much soil and tomatoes. There's a tiny little bit more in there. Okay, this is the dry waste. We'll see all those little bugs coming out. Now that's still really mushy. Remember the last time? It went all mushy like that. And you can see that underneath there, this was the dry waste. Underneath there, there's still carrot and other waste that hasn't decomposed. I better dig it out for argument's sake to see what's left in here. Yo. Now that's definitely more than what was left in the wet waste one, and this is the dry waste one, but look how mushy it's gone. Looks like the netting has come uncovered here, which doesn't surprise me last time because I covered it up very quickly. Okay, let's see what we've got. This was the wet waste. Almost gone. Oh no, not quite. Look at that. So again, if I take out that, this looks like it's got some tomatoes in there too, but there is still a lot of carrot, and there's a wormy in there. You can see a little worm. Look at that. See that little worm just there? There's a couple of little baby worms in there. There's another one just there. So the worms are coming to this. Now that that acidity has gone out of it from soaking it, the worms are starting to breed up in there. Oh, there's a nice big worm. Oops, just covered him up. See there? So this one had tomatoes in it as well, and that's definitely more. This is more like the second pot with the dry waste. So it still has a little way to go, but still a good result, a beautiful way to breed up worms if that's what you want to do. Oh look, the soldier flies got in there. So once they get in there, you're going to get a much quicker decomposition rate, but you can still see this dry waste. It's gone mushy like the dry waste in pot number 2, and it's actually pot number 3 and 4 I'm using. So I'm not going to dig that up. It's clear to see that there's still waste in there that hasn't decomposed, and that's the dry waste buried under the soil. Very interesting. Hi again everyone. It's been 9 days since I looked at these pots with my apple and carrot and beetroot experiment, and we've just had major flooding in Brisbane, and I want to get out here now while I've got a break in the rain to show you that this garden gets absolutely waterlogged when we get a massive rain, and you can often see the water coming in through the holes in the side into the pot because the water is so, the ground is so waterlogged. But it doesn't look too bad this time. However, you can see how damp all that waste looks, and actually it has filled up with water. See, oh gee, I don't know if you can see that water level there where there's that rim of like you can see a flood line. If you can see that just there, and that goes all the way around, and you can see the ants everywhere on the rim. So they've obviously been scared out of their homes as well because of the rain. That would have flooded them everywhere, and they've found the one dry spot in the garden to be right now. And the other reason I can tell this is flooded is because there's a rim there of the tomato skins that were left in this pot the last time we did this video. So it's obviously filled up with water, the soil's dropped first, and the tomato skins have been pushed to the side as the water has receded. So let's have a look. Yeah. I'll take that out and show you. This is pretty much not much different from when we did it last time. There's a lot more, oh, there's a little wormy there. There's a lot more water in the soil now, and there's more soil has come into the pot. It's obviously been washed into the pot from the excess water, so that's pretty much, let's say, a shovel, a scoopful. But there's a little worm there. Now what you'll often find when you get flooded soil, the worms will come out of the soil and they'll be trying to find somewhere to get out of the water. And if you've got, say, paving or something beside a garden bed, you'll often find your paving the next day with dead worms on it as they've tried to escape the rising water and find somewhere safe to get out of it. And whether that occurred here, look, is anybody's guess. I think if I take this soil out of here, they could well be full of worms. You see how wet it is. No, it doesn't look like there's any worms in here. But as that dries, I'm sure they'll come back into that. Anyway, let's look at the dry weight pot. The dry weight pot. Oh, gee, I can't even talk. So here's pot number 2. This was the dry waste. Oh, look how sludgy that is. And look where the water level came to in there, all the way up to there. So it would be pretty hard for any worms to survive in that sort of depth of water, and they would have been trying to find a space to get out of the rain. There's a little worm there, just there. This is very mushy too in the lid. Look at that. See how wet that soil is? I should empty this out really to dry the pot out. And you can see down the bottom how mushy that all looks, but everything has decomposed by the looks of it. Oh no, it hasn't. Now look at that. That is still undecomposed waste in there. That is really interesting. So it's clear that the wet waste definitely decomposes quicker. I don't need to take that out. I wonder, it would have been interesting to be able to get out here and film it while it was really raining. It was pelting down. So of course, as I said, there's floods in Brisbane, but it wasn't possible. It was just too strong. If it had been drizzling, I might have tried, but it wasn't. It was pelting down. So I'll just put some. These leaves are a bit damp, but it's not full of soil now. Give it a bit. Make it a bit easier for it to dry out. Now I don't know if you can see here, but the grass clippings that were on the top, there's the mesh under there, and the grass clippings that were on the top have all been washed partially away by this flooding we've had. Same as over here. You can see the mesh there, and the grass clippings are very, very wet. So let's have a look underneath and see what's happened with the waste under the soil. Oh, little millipede. Well, you can say now that there's a nice little wormy in there, but you can certainly say that the wet waste under the ground has disappeared. You can see though that the the tomato skins are still a little bit there. They haven't completely decomposed. I've got to talk loud now to talk over my neighbour so you can hear what I'm saying. So see, there's still some tomato skins there, but there's nothing much. It's definitely decomposed. So that's a good result. Still, took longer than in the compost. So let's pull this side up. This, of course, was the dry waste on this side. And it too has decomposed now. It seems pretty clear to me from this experiment that the wet waste in the compost broke down the fastest. The dry waste in pot number 3 broke down the slowest, but this was affected by the flooding when the pot filled up with water. And the dry and wet waste buried under the ground roughly decomposed at the same rate, but was still slower than the wet waste in pot number 4. Thanks for watching.